Has Donald Trump disrupted the world order completely? Are we seeing a total disruption of the world order? I want to come to you there in the United States. Andrew Latham, can you tell us, in your view, is this a complete disruption of the global trade order, or is this just how Trump is?
Well, there's two answers to that question. The deeper one is yes. This is not the 1930s, and it's not the post-World War II era, and it's not the post-Cold War era either. I think we're entering a new era of political economy globally, and it's going to be messy, as it was at the end of the Second World War, at the end of the Cold War. It's going to be really messy, and I can't imagine a figure who could make it messier than President Trump. Now, having said that, I think he's also motivated simply by he wants to do a new deal. This is the language he uses. He wants to do a new deal. He wants America to stop being, as he puts it, ripped off. But I think he's just an epiphenomenon of something which is way deeper, which is that the United States is repositioning itself and reconstructing the international political economy in ways that we haven't seen since 1991, since 1945, or indeed since the interwar period.
Before I move to the other guest, just to push you, do you believe this is part of his ideological commitment that right from the very start of his life, of his career in public life, he's always believed that the United States has lost out because of tariff barriers in different parts of the world, and it's time to sort of rewrite the world order? Is this an ideological commitment?
It's an instinct rather than an ideological commitment, I think. He kind of understands that this is a different moment, but he has no intellectual capacity. And the people around him are also guilty of this. They have no intellectual capacity for grasping the bigger picture, which is we are on the cusp of a different era in the history of the world, frankly, and he's acting instinctively, reflexively, but he's not acting intellectually.
Interesting, very interestingly put. Peter Taylor, Director, Institute of Development Studies in Brighton, United Kingdom. How do you see it? Do you believe that this is the ultimate disruptor who's come in with a mandate that he believes allows him, entitles him to disrupt the world order and, in his own view, restore some kind of an America First philosophy?
Yeah, he's undoubtedly disrupting the world order. I agree with Andrew. And this, his approach to trade and tariffs is one element of a whole series of ways in which he's disrupting the world order. Since he was elected, he's, of course, sowed confusion in multiple ways. He's talked about seizing territory, Canada, Greenland, Gaza, the Panama Canal. He's renaming parts of the world and changing names on the map. He's engaged in ending wars and conflicts around the world, ostensibly for the benefit of America, again. And he's also dismantling federal programs such as USAID and others. So he's disrupting in many, many different arenas, and this particular disruption in relation to trade and tariffs is the latest, and it seems to be a pattern to sow as much confusion as possible, as rapidly as possible. And that makes it very difficult to respond to, which I'm sure everyone is grappling with. I watched the announcement that he made last night, and I could just imagine as he held up the piece of cardboard with, with details of tariffs, that presidents and governments around the world must have had their faces glued to screens trying to see, well, what would be the tariff on the board? Someone remarked it looked a little bit like a board that a bookkeeper would hold at a race with the odds on horses. So I think that's really very challenging in terms of how do people respond to policy making live on television. Absolutely massive confusion and disruption being sown.
In fact, he's even on that board put 50% tariffs for Lesotho. And that perhaps reflects how Donald Trump approaches the world. Lesotho also gets a mention in that black board of, or that board of his. But Shankar Iyer, there are those who will argue that Donald Trump is doing something that was needed to be done. For much too long, the World Trade Order needed someone to come in and disrupt it. The rules-based World Trade Order was not working. Do you believe that? Do you believe Donald Trump is right with the timing of his disruption, or has he got it horribly wrong? Shankar.
Well, my last week's column, I used a line from Julius Caesar Mark Antony's speech where he said, if that was true, it was a serious flaw. And the US has several problems. Mr. Trump has looked at the problem in different ways, articulated different ideas. The fact of the matter, Rajdeep, is that in the run-up to the Second World War, the US was emerging as a huge economic power, and in the World War, it became a military superpower. Over the last few decades, it has consistently been this sort of visualized or seen as a huge military superpower, but its economic power has been on the wane. And how did this happen? Because in the 70s, the US corporations decided to opt for productivity. And they started pushing the policy for opening up foreign direct investment in various places. They are the ones who invited China into the WTO, sponsored its entry, sponsored its growth. So in the end, it is the United States of America which exported its technology, exported its jobs, exported its goods, exported its capital, and exported its exports. Who is to be blamed? So Mr. Trump has got the wrong end of the stick in his view. Now, this action that he has taken covers 68% of US exports. And in this 68%, the one calculation says that they will raise about $600 billion, which means that Americans will be poorer by $600 billion. Even if the United States is a $30 trillion economy, it begs the question, can it survive this onslaught, this assault on its own economy? So I think that...
I'll come to the survival question. I'll come to the survival question later in the show, whether this is Donald Trump's first move in what could be a bit of a chess game that he's trying to play as some kind of a political grandmaster or a political disruptor. But let me just go to Hong Kong for a moment. Andrew Lewing, how do you perceive it? How is China seeing this at the moment? Is China seeing this as complete disruption of the world order? The Chinese have already said that they will retaliate.
I think that the Chinese leadership already saw it coming with Trump 1.0, and President Xi at that time already ordered the country to prepare itself for it by focusing on self-reliance and technology, by growing its economy, domestic economy, pivoting more towards internal consumption, and also trading more with the global South. In this way, China is, to a certain extent, has been insulated itself, but of course it can't insulate itself completely because China is the largest trader and manufacturer around the world. And Trump is precisely wants to derail or contain China's influence in these regards. And no doubt there is a total upheaval of the so-called rule-based order. And we have a curious situation here whereby the originator and leader of the so-called world global rule-based order is destroying it, whereas the perceived blackened challenger, i.e. China, is trying to defend it. And also, you can see that Trump is trying to run the country or run the world as if it is a pure business. There's no sentimentality, there is no kind of values. It's based on transactions. And then introducing, or well, not only introducing, but pivoting towards the rule of the jungle. Rather than a fair rule-based order. So you
Those
can
are
see
very
the
strong words.
disruptions all around.
Those are very strong words. Rule of the jungle, not a rules-based order. Is that an exaggeration, you think, KC Singh, as someone who's been in the world of diplomacy for decades? Has Donald Trump upended not just the World Trade Order, it's the way to do business? Every ally of Donald Trump today seems to be either red-faced or seems angered in some form or the other with what Donald Trump has done.
No, that is true. But I think what is important is that he's got many notions which have no basis in economics. He thinks that tariffs are really money he's taking away from other countries, whereas all this will be paid for by the American consumer. He doesn't understand that. It'll cause inflation. It'll cause, Goldman Sachs has said there's a 40% chance of a recession. The American economy will slow down. He explains it as short-term pain, long-term gain. He's only got 3.5 years of his term left. So he's gambling. If this and the midterms come by the middle of November of 2026, you'll have the midterm elections in America. So if there is inflation, if the people are unhappy, and already we've seen in Wisconsin, despite Elon Musk spending so much money there, they've lost the Supreme Court judge's election. So there is a move, public opinion, even those who voted for Musk, voted for Trump, who thought that he'll be handling their problems or day-to-day problems of inflation, he'll bring down, improve the economy, jobs. Instead of paying attention there, he's causing more disruption. But then if you look at the thing, America is today only producing 11% of the global goods and services which are produced. 12% is China and 13% is European Union. The NATO countries are meeting as we speak, and they're going to be asking Marco Rubio, what the hell are you doing? What kind of a NATO ally are you if you're going to be creating this kind of disruption? But I think what may happen is not what Trump has planned, because countries may realign. China, 12% of China, 13% of EU, 5% of Korea and Japan. It comes to almost a third of the global services and goods products which is coming in. You can isolate America. You can create new alliances, new trading blocs. And I think that is the direction which the world may have to go.